In this video, I'm going to explain the exact strategy for how to do any SAT vocab question, no matter how difficult it is, and even if you don't know what the words actually mean. I'm going to say some stuff in this video that I genuinely have not heard any other SAT YouTuber talk about, or at least explain in this way, so stay locked in and focus because you might actually learn something that will change your entire strategy in this video. If you want to know why you should trust me, I personally got a 760 on the SAT reading section. I've also helped hundreds of students improve their SAT scores already, and I currently own the biggest online SAT school community in the world. I know this stuff works, and the students who actually use this typically do improve their vocab skills tremendously. Let me start by showing you what most students do, and let me tell you, this is going to look really cringe, but a lot of you guys are doing it. When you see a vocab question, what most students end up doing is they might just skim through the passage. Like, okay, researchers said the reefs and they consider exceptional out of their curve frequency. So they I guess they feel more confident or something about their stuff. Okay, so that makes sense to me. And now let me look at the choices. Renew, okay, I know what that word means. So that's probably going to be the right answer, I assume. Temper, I do not know what that word means. So probably is not going to be it. Celebrate, okay, that sounds good, but it sounds a little bit too happy, so I'm not going to go for that one. Then dismiss, not really sure if I know what that word means either, so yeah, probably not going to go for it. Okay, so I'll just go for renew for the answer. You can probably see as I did that there was an extremely cringe, really bad way of approaching this. No kind of actual strategy, no kind of system, and I went for renew, which is not even the right answer for this one. Instead, you want to be approaching these questions very systematically. Let me show you the exact process. First thing you do is you read through the passage. And I explained this a little bit more in my reading passage video. Definitely check that out. That was a really good video. Honestly, unironically, I'm pretty happy with how that video turned out. But essentially, just to summarize what I say in that video, you want to basically read each sentence and explain it in your own mind or out loud if you're in private as you go through it, just to make sure you fully understand it. Basically, pretend like you're explaining it to somebody who has the same amount of skills, same amount of knowledge, just as smart as you are, and you just want to explain it to that person. And by doing this, you end up really understanding each sentence well in your own mind, and it helps you be able to make a really good choice for the answer. So for this one here, we see researchers studying coral reefs in the Pacific have found that bleaching events, once considered exceptional, now occur with enough frequency that some scientists have begun to blank their earlier optimism. Okay, so just to summarize that, before I even finish the sentence, what we're saying here is that researchers who are studying these reefs, they found that, I guess, whitening events, that are the things where they make them more white, I guess that's a common thing for coral. They were once considered something that almost never happens, it's a very rare thing, but now they're very common, so they're happening all the time. And so for that reason, let me read the rest of it, they've begun to blank their earlier optimism about the reef's long-term resilience. Okay, so I would assume they used to feel really confident. They used to think okay, this never happened, so the reefs must be awesome. And now they're realizing okay, it's actually happening all the time, so we're probably screwed. The reefs are probably going to get absolutely destroyed in a few years. So I would assume they're beginning to decrease, they're beginning to lower their optimism, essentially. And that is actually step 2 of the process, which is make a prediction. Before you even look at the choices, predict what you think the answer probably is going to be. Many students never do this, and it's one reason they consistently make the wrong choices on these questions. Because when you make a prediction, it kind of primes your brain to be able to tell the right answer. It kind of will make it jump out at you even what the correct answer is. And it'll be so much easier than if you're just going into it blind. It's very easy to confuse yourself and choose an answer that's not right at all if you're just going to the choices immediately. As for what your prediction has to be, just think of some word that comes to your mind as for what would probably fill in the blank. I said the word decrease. I think that's a fair prediction for this one. You might think of lower, something like that. And just keep in mind, I really want to stop the cap here. If you cannot make a prediction, you did not understand the passage well enough. Full stop, there's not really any exception to that rule. I'm just going to say there is no exception to that rule. And the way to think about it is kind of if I was to explain to you something and I didn't finish the thought off, assuming you understand the world, I'm assuming you understand people at least a little bit, you probably are going to be able to guess how I'm going to finish off my statement. For example, say I told you, hey, I just won $1 million. You probably would guess that I'm going to finish that sentence off by saying hey, I'm really excited, I'm really happy, I'm going to do something amazing. Or if I'm an entrepreneur, maybe you'd expect me to say hey, I'm going to invest in my business. Or if I'm someone who really is tired with life, you might expect me to say, hey, I'm going to go to the Bahamas and drink coconuts all day. You would be able to make a prediction as for how I would finish that thought off. You would not be hey, I have no idea what you're going to say there. You're not have no expectations at all. Assuming you at least know me at least a little bit. And so that's the same way this works. If you cannot make a prediction, clearly you just don't understand the passage. Clearly you are not making sense of it in your mind well enough. And in that case, you should go back to the passage and reread it until you do. Just do that. Then finally, you can go and select the right answer. Now, a few things I really need to mention for this process of selecting the right answer. First of all, I kind of view it as a math equation. So it's kind of like the probability of the question choice being right is equal to how confident you are that you know what the word actually means, multiplied by how likely it is you think it's going to be right. And now just think about what this is actually saying. So if you see a word where you have no idea at all what it means, you're going to have a very, very low confidence. It doesn't matter how correct you might think it looks, your confidence is going to be very, very low. So it's probably not going to have very high probability of being right. But you might see a question where you have a very, very high confidence of it being either right or wrong. If you have a very high confidence of it being wrong, then you know that it's like a very high, you can think of this as like a negative number. It's like if there's a negative chance of it being right, it's going to be a very high thing times something negative, which would be like a large negative number, like negative 500 or something. But if it's something else, if you actually are very confident it is right, you would then have a very high confidence of it being the right answer, in which case you should probably select that answer. It's probably going to be right. Now, you can't always maximize both of these. Sometimes you'll have to go for one where it's a little bit more of one than the other. But at the very least, you can use this to think about the choices. You can use this to make a little bit more sense of it in your mind. Now, as for what you can use to figure out whether it's right, there are really three things. First is just vibes. Now, I know this is like very not scientific. I know this went on a whole like big rant about how you're supposed to use a very systematic way of solving these problems. Unfortunately, sometimes there are cases where you just have to use what the word looks like. So leave open that possibility. That can happen, unfortunately. Be okay with that. Second thing is what I call etymology. This refers to the roots and prefixes of the word. In my Skool community, I actually have a link to all of the most frequent roots and prefixes that you'll see on SAT vocab questions, so check that out with the link in the description below. But back to the thing. Etymology refers to those kinds of things. It's like if I have a word and starts with IN. IN typically means not. Like if I was to say the word indestructible, invincible, incapable. All those mean not something, not able to be destroyed, not able to be conquered, vindicated, not able to be capable. Then using that information, you can typically find out what the rest of the word means. So etymology is a super big thing. And if you can memorize these different roots and prefixes, it makes these questions so much easier, I'll be honest. And then the third thing is just what you already know. Now, I leave this at third rather than first because I don't want you to feel that you 100% have to know what every single word means. In fact, that's like kind of a pipe dream. Like you're probably not going to be able to understand or at least know for sure what every single word means. But if you do know what a word means, then of course you can use your previous knowledge. Like you can just use what you know. So going back to this one now, let's go to each of these choices. Renew. I definitely know what renew means. I have a very high confidence on that. But I don't think it's going to be right because we are looking for something that means like decrease. Renew is basically the exact opposite of decrease. So I'm very confident that this is wrong. So A is definitely not going to be the right answer. Then we have temper. So I'll be honest, I kind of have an idea of what this means. I'm, moderately confident, I guess you could say. And as for my confidence, I believe temper means kind of like decrease or like lower or at least make it a little bit less high than the highest in terms of something. So if I was like to temper my expectations, I would essentially lower my expectations. So I'm basically saying a bunch of things here that makes it seem pretty obvious that yes, temper is going to be the right choice for you because I have a pretty decent confidence, but it's a very high likelihood of it being right. So moderate here, but very high here. So therefore B is going to be right. If we look at the other one, celebrate, I do have a very high confidence for that one, but same thing, very low chance of it actually being right because it's just celebrate, that's, again, pretty much the exact opposite of decrease, or at least kind of different kind of idea than decrease, you could say. And then finally, dismiss. I do have very high confidence on this as well. I do know what this means. It means like to get rid of something. Like if I dismiss my employee, that basically means I fire them. As for how likely I think it is that's going to be right, it's kind of like more mid because dismiss their earlier optimism about the reef's long-term resilience. We're not like throwing it away. It's more like we're just lowering it. It's not like we're completely like getting rid of all optimism we ever felt. So therefore B is going to be the right answer. Let's go through a few more of these. Despite spending over a decade pursuing the project, the architect was forced to blank, the most ambitious design after city planners rejected the proposal for the fourth time. So as for my re-explanation of the passage, I guess we're saying here, so this architect pursued this for a very, very long time, but the architect was forced to, I guess, abandon essentially the idea after they kept getting rejection again and again. They eventually had to give up on their dreams and be sad and I guess whatever. So I would guess the word like abandon, and Deadass, I did not realize that was one of the choices. So, okay, I guess we're pretty confident that's going to be abandoned for the correct answer, but let's just check to make sure. So, looking at these choices, refine, I do know what refine means, high confidence there. Refine her design. She would not just be refining it if she literally got rejected. Like, refining something you do when you get like constructive feedback. If she got rejected, she's like throwing it out. So low probability of it being right. So get rid of that one. Abandon, yes, it is exactly my prediction. But even if it wasn't, I could just also look at it like abandon. I definitely know what that means. And I also have a very high confidence of it being right. Because abandon, that means like get rid of something, get rid of your ideas, etc. Defend and publicize, I may have a strong confidence on those, but both of them just don't really seem right as well. Same kind of thing, they don't match the passage. Marie Curie was often portrayed by early biographers as a solitary genius working in isolation, but more recent historical research has blanked this characterization by uncovering the substantial network of collaborators whose work support her own. So Marie Curie, they used to think that she was just, an introvert, solitary person just working on her own, grinding in the dark, I guess you could say. But then they actually discovered that she had a bunch of collaborators that really helped her out, really made her work better. So she was more like actually working with other people. So as for my prediction, I guess I would say kind of changed the characterization. It did not completely destroy it, but at least they realized, okay, she wasn't just fully like on her Sigma grinds at ARC. She had some other people that she was working with as well. So I guess I'd just say change. Now let's look at the choices. So confirm. Okay, high confidence there, but definitely not right at all because confirmed is like, yeah, that's the exact opposite of what we're going for. Revise. Okay, that seems pretty good here. High confidence here. I do know what that word means. And revise, it means like to kind of change up to make something a little bit different. So definitely going to go for this one as well. Celebrate, replicated. Same kind of issue as a high confidence, but low chance of it being right. Here's a much harder one now. Many policymakers assume that lowering taxes will automatically stimulate economic growth. So trickle-down economics type stuff, if you get lower taxes, more stuff in the economy. However, empirical studies of past tax cuts presents a far more blank picture, with outcomes that vary significantly by country, time period, and the specific tax being adjusted. So there's a lot more stuff going on. It's a lot more complicated, you could say, than what they initially expected. As for my prediction, I guess I would just say complicated. Yeah, that's a pretty fair one. That is not one of the choices here, though, so we're going to have to look a little bit more closely. So damaging. Very confident about that one, damage, to destroy something essentially, but it's not damaging because damaging has a very negative kind of idea with it. It's like you're destroying something. It's like in order for this to be the case, you'd have to say that the economy is completely destroyed every single time you put taxes in there. That's not really the case, so very low likelihood of this being right. Equivocal. I gotta be honest, I only have like a moderate actual like understanding of that word. I think it means something like maybe more ambiguous. I'm guessing because I think unequivocal, it means like, full, complete destruction. But like ambiguous, I think is kind of the idea. But as for my thought of it being right, I think probably a decent chance, but I'm not entirely sure. So I'll put like maybe like a small error, I guess I could say. Disputed. So I do know what that word means, but disputed means that you have like one person who's like, yes, this is really good. And then one person who's like, no, this is really bad. Like complete at odds with each other, different sides of the spectrum, and they just can't agree. So if we had one economist who's like, lowering taxes saves the economy, it makes everything like the greatest it's ever been, and another economist who's like, no, it like ruins the economy, makes it so terrible. We don't really see that. We have a more like nuanced idea here. It's like more different factors being taken into consideration. It's like, it's not necessarily good or bad. It just has different outcomes depending on who we're looking at. So I would say like a kind of really only a moderate likelihood. Like if we have literally no other choice, let's go for it, but I don't feel very confident. Then finally, uniform, definitely confident about that one as well. But like uniform, it's definitely not at all, like very low likelihood because uniform means pretty much the exact opposite. It would mean that everything is the exact same, depending on where we are. So really between B and C, and here's kind of thing that might kind of change your way of looking at these questions. I would actually really go for B for the answer for this one because disputed, I feel pretty confident about it that it's actually wrong. Equivocal, on the other hand, I only feel a little bit confident, but it seems like it's going to be right based off of my understanding of the word. So that's the kind of thing you have to think about. Like if you genuinely feel confident that the other ones, you know what they mean and that they're probably not going to be right, you might have to go for a word that you feel a little bit less confident in as for your actually understanding of its meaning, but one that just seems like it has a higher chance of it being right. I know this is a bit of a risk. I know these questions can be a bit risky when you end up doing stuff like this, but it's sometimes a situation you have to be in. Let me do this one real quick, and I'm going to actually use some more of the roots and prefixes for this question. So critics initially dismissed Zora Neale Hurston's use of dialect in Their Eyes Were Watching God as unsophisticated, but later scholars have come to view her linguistic choices as a blank artistic achievement that authentically captures the rhythms of Black Southern speech. So they initially thought that the dialects that she used in the story were just like pointless, like they weren't really helping anything. They just kind of made the story more lackluster. But in actuality, they realized it had an artistic value to them, that it actually was trying to capture what life was like for Black people in the South at that time. As for my prediction, I would say that it's I guess like a conscious idea. Like she specifically wanted to do this, and it was like part of the intention, I guess you could say. So now let's look at the choices, see which one matches. We have modest. Let's say I don't know what modest means. So let's say we only have like a low confidence. Modest, we have the word mod in there. So, okay, you might think like Discord mods, but no, that's not really what we're trying to look at here. Mod could also mean something like mode. I'm not sure if you know that from statistics. Mode is the most common thing in SEV data. So modest, it kind of gives me the idea of like something kind of in the middle. It's kind of something very common. I don't think it really works because common artistic achievement, like a low artistic achievement, that's not really what they're trying to say here. So probably low likelihood as well. So probably wrong. Deliberate. What can we figure out with this stuff here? Well, we have liberate. Liberate, we know that means to like free someone, to save somebody from, I guess, like captivity. And then we have D. D means essentially entirely. So something that's like complete, something that's full. So, okay, so we have D, liberate, entirely free something. As for my confidence, as for whether I know it, I don't have much understanding of this word, let's say. But as for whether I think it could be right, I would say it's kind of like an okay amount. Like I feel, it could be right, entirely. It sounds like something very complete, something very big. So that could work. Essentially, maybe it could be like it's freeing the thoughts from her mind. She effectively freed the thoughts, something like that. Controversial, contro, I know that definitely means something like against. So something, and you probably also just know the word controversial essentially means like people backlash to something. So I don't think that's what they're saying. We're trying to say something good here. So not really controversial, not something against anything. So probably not right there as well. Then finally, puzzling. You probably know what puzzling means, just kind of confusing, kind of weird. I think it's not really confusing or weird in this one. So that also would not be the case. So deliberate, even though we're not entirely sure what that word means, out of what we know about the etymology, out of what we're able to figure out, it definitely has the best shot out of the choices we're given. Okay, so real quick here, I just want to show another example of one type of vocab question you might see on the SAT. These don't show up that often, but sometimes they do. You might see a question where it says, as used in the text, what does this word mean? You just solve these the exact same way as all the other problems I've shown in this video. But let me just go over it real quick. So you read the passage like before. When marine biologists first surveyed the reef in 1987, they cataloged more than 200 species of fish thriving among the coral. Okay, so when they first looked at this coral reef a long time ago, they found a ton of fish there. By 2015, after decades of warming waters and agricultural runoff, the once vibrant ecosystem had been so denuded that researchers were able to complete the same survey in a fraction of the time, recording only a handful of species clinging on to bleached and crumbling structures. Okay, so they're saying that after some years had passed, there were so few animals left that they were able to like do really, really fast because there were just a few that they just had to look at. They're like, okay, there's like 5 animals there, so that's it. Let me predict. What do I think the word denuded means? I would guess just means it was so bare, it was so like sparse essentially. We had no animals there. It was like empty, nobody's living there anymore. It's like, ghost town essentially. So yeah, let's say sparse. And now let's look at the choices and see which one matches. So obscured, okay, I do know what that means, but very low likelihood of that being right just because obscured, that means pretty much the exact opposite. That would indicate that there's so many animals that you don't even know what's going on anymore. So yeah, and also it kind of means like not, in case you didn't know, like obscured, obstruct, that kind of stuff. But yeah, regardless. Stripped, that means like to remove, to take everything away from something. Something is stripped down, it's very bare bones. So as you can guess, like, yeah, that really matches both things. I know what it means, and it also matches the prediction well. Transformed and abandoned, they both are okay. Like transformed especially is somewhat good, but it kind of lacks the connotation. We don't really have that kind of feeling of it just being like removed, bare bones. Transformed can mean anything. It can mean like they just replaced all the coral with like cotton candy or something. But that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at specifically removed a bunch of stuff. If you want to improve in vocab, the first thing I would recommend doing is actually learn the roots and prefixes. I'm not just trying to get you to join the course. Generally, this really does help so much because if you can actually decipher what these words mean, like I was able to do here, you can make so much more sense of them. If I did not know what D and liberate meant, I probably wouldn't have been able to figure that choice at all from what I was just given. So this is really, really helpful. Second thing, after you get past that, it's just, okay, this is going to sound cringe. You're probably going to hate me for saying this, but generally just practice. But hear me out here. As you practice more and more SAT vocab questions, the thing that helps is that it makes you better at using this method. It makes you better at deciphering what words mean. It also exposes you to more and more words as well. You might be able to see words that appear again and again, occasionally, that you now know just because you've done so many questions. You just want to get really good at this process of reading these passages, making predictions, and also deciphering what words mean, even when you're not exactly sure. Nevertheless, I would say for vocab, it's the kind of thing you should focus at the later stages of your SAT prep journey. If you're just starting out, you should focus on the passage questions, on grammar, on transitions, that stuff. Vocab is the kind of thing where you can improve, like 100% you really can improve. Don't let anybody tell you can't. But it should only be saved after you've done everything else. Both because the other stuff helps you with this, because it like helps you understand how to read passages better, but also just because it's higher leverage. Like you're more likely to improve in passage questions and grammar than in a vocab question. Speaking of which, if you want to improve, make sure to check out Mission 1400 Plus in the link in the description below. It's my full program where I'll give you all my information about the SAT as a whole, every single problem type. Plus, I will actually work with you one-on-one to help you improve your score and give you access to over 28,000 practice questions using the platform on Go here. If you're below 1400 and you really want to get there before your next test, this might literally save you. So make sure to check out the link in the description and consider joining today. That is it for me. Hope you do well in the SAT and get through these hard vocab questions. I'm John. Stay Gucci.